Session 3, selecting the right cloud for the right job. That is the topic of the next hour. Before we do start though, I just want to remind our online audience, if you've got questions, send them in as soon as you can. Don't leave it till the end of the hour because we won't have time to address any of the questions. Also, earlier in the previous panel, skills and talent was mentioned. Well, stay tuned because after lunch we have more to say about that subject. So, how does a telco select the most appropriate cloud provider or cloud technology for their specific needs? That's what we're going to be addressing. We have 5 expert witnesses, a packed panel for you before lunch. And I'm going to ask them now to come up one at a time to deliver their expert witness statements. As usual, they have just 3 minutes to deliver their messages to you. Then we'll find out what the motion is going to be. So, first of all, could we have our first expert witness to the lectern, please? Vivek, please. And Vivek Chadha, who is SVP and Global Head of Telco Cloud with Rakuten Symphony.
Thank you, Guy. Hello, everybody. I think I'm quite well aware we're between you and lunch, so we'll try and make it less than boring. First of all, I think I'll find myself reasonably satisfied if I can leave you with a few provocative questions, which I think will hopefully help the part of the debate that follows. I'm going to refer to something Jeff said. He mentioned 1998 in the context of things that have happened in the industry, etc. I'd like to one-up him if I can and go back 10,000 years. There's a book by Yuval Harari called Sapiens, and there's a bit in it about the agricultural revolution. Those of you who've read it, there's a very interesting take he takes on the role of wheat in society. And he's made a statement, man did not domesticate wheat, wheat domesticated man. And our societies have evolved around all of that. Wars have been fought, countries, etc., etc. I'm aware this is about cloud, bear with me. The first question I want you to think about is, if you are not very aware as a business and a technocrat, is cloud about to become, and when I say cloud, I mean it in its general public cloud hyperscaler sense, is it about to become the new wheat for the telco business? Is it going to dictate what we end up doing and the boundaries that we have rather than us leveraging it as a tool? So that's the first point. The second point, which is again related to the headline topic, is I think there is a few conundrums that are getting balanced every time a telco is trying to make decisions about what is the right cloud for them. What are the capabilities I need the cloud platform or the cloud solution to provide for me? What is it for? And everybody's need is not the same. Even their perspective of what cloud means is not the same. Do I have the competencies I need? And this leads to the last one, which I think is really interesting. I think there are organizations, few of them are really strong, they have the right leadership who've actually come about this the right way, but a lot of them are conflating convenience and lack of control. They're saying it's easier, it's somebody else's headache, I don't have to deal with supply chain, let me go there, but then you are losing a degree of control and you may not worry about it. The Aztecs didn't. The last is that telco in general is an engineering-driven business historically. But the society that we serve, whether it's B2C or B2B, I think Lord Holmes used the right word for it, it's becoming an experiential-driven society. They care about outcomes and what they can do with the technology. They don't care about the technology itself as much. For our engineers, that's slightly hard to come about because what that means is we have to stop thinking less about the bits and bolts and what we need, and is it better than something else? And think about what does it mean for the customer. And I'll end by saying that whatever tool that you want to choose from a cloud platform perspective, try and keep these perspectives in mind. Thank you.
Great, Vivek, thank you very much. Excellent, thank you for those comments, Vivek. Our second expert witness is Anita Döhler, who is the CEO of the NGMN Alliance. Anita, please.
Thank you. The right cloud for the right job. Flexibility, openness. So this is what we, the NGMN, Next Generation Mobile Networks Alliance, stand for. That's the core of what we are doing, steering the industry towards interoperability and economies of scale. As an industry alliance spanning over the entire ecosystem, the value chain, with being operator-led, with operators, manufacturers, but also research institutes, system integrators, consulting companies. That's what we are doing for all the three main topics we are focusing on. So how to master disaggregation, how to tackle the climate change, and how to pave the way for 6G. And just recently, our board of directors, which is consisting of more than 20 operators globally, issued the Cloud Native Manifesto. And why have we done this? So companies at the moment, operators, the ecosystem are at very different stages and also at very different sizes, basically, on the route to disaggregation. But what we see is that the struggle, the challenges, but also the opportunities we have are pretty common. So I heard today the word collaboration very, very often, and it was music to my ears, of course. And actually, it's not only on a global level, also locally, in a pre-competitive environment, we can do a lot through collaboration. So what are the main principles in the Cloud Native Manifesto? And I will not read them out here, or I encourage everyone to read the manifesto. But it is about, for instance, decoupled infrastructure and application life cycles over vertical monoliths. Then it shall be based on GitOps principles. It shall be also based on APIs first over the manual provisioning of resources, unified Kubernetes or the like when it comes to resource consumption patterns, closed loop reconciliation, and last but not least, interoperability through well-defined certification processes. And this is exactly what we are currently tackling in the Alliance, and together, of course, with other industry organizations. We have several here also in the room. How can we take this, bring this into action in our industry to really enable an open and flexible ecosystem and enable operators and the ecosystem to focus on delivering the best customer experience? Thank you.
Anita, thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, download that manifesto if you haven't already done so. Our next expert witness is Kristian Toivo, who is the Executive Director of TIP, the Telecom Infra project. Kristian.
Thank you, and it's great to be here to talk about a topic that I did not spend 30 years of my life on. I spent 30 years developing telecom systems, and then I spent 2.5 years in a system integrator with cloud transformation. And I think those 2.5 years gave me much more insights to some extent than those 30 years before. And my initial statement to the whole question here, I actually don't think it matters which cloud provider you choose. You just have to choose a cloud provider. And in that last job before this one, I had this opportunity of a boss who said that everybody in the team has to be certified with one of the cloud providers, doesn't matter which one. I chose one, doesn't matter which it was. And the insights you get from that, you realize, which I think all of us should be aware of, that at least in the, let's say, IT environment of today, nobody would imagine to kind of develop your infrastructure, your applications without building them on a cloud platform, because that's the only way to get those applications, to get automation, and to get scale. We have yet to figure that out, how we do it in the telco environment. And when I say telco environment, I mean the network environment, of course. And some operators, some players in this industry have taken the initial steps, particularly in those greenfield environments. I think they have been proving and kind of creating the wave, plowing the way, if you're right, for the rest of us. And I think what really is needed is a couple of things when we move forward as an industry and as telcos to embrace the cloud. One is that we need to take a holistic approach. That goes back to that we need to think how the organization deals with this. How do we kind of break down those silos that exist? How do we make sure we have the skills? In the previous panels, we talked about skills, and it's obvious you can't have all those skills, but you have to have enough skills that you can engage with the rest of the ecosystem. And then you need to change your culture to dare to take this on. And ultimately, when you do that change, that transformation in your mind, you're also then ready to start thinking of how do you transform your business to be cloud native. And as I said, I don't think it really matters which cloud provider you use. I think the mechanisms in our industry, in the telco industry, is that our supply chain process will drive the right behaviors and the right commercial terms. All of those cloud providers we talk about on a global scale, they have the capabilities to support the industry transformation. They have some strength versus each other, but ultimately in the longer term, it will all even out. I think the most important thing is, as an industry, we start the journey of transforming, and it starts with ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristian. Thank you very much indeed. Just make the choice. Okay, so number 4, Andrew Coward, please come up onto the lectern. Andrew is General Manager of Software Networking at IBM.
Thanks, Guy. And good afternoon, I can say that now. Well, it's time for a non-historic analogy. And when I saw the title of this, and I was immediately drawn to the expression horses for courses, right? Putting the right horse on the right race course if you're going to win a race. And it struck me that the applications are the horses and the cloud is the race course. So stick with me on this. So if you think about the applications, right, there are essentially, in my analogy, 3 different types of applications you're looking at putting into the cloud. The first I'm going to call donkeys. There's hundreds of applications in the infrastructure that you might well put into a cloud provider. You probably went through a very painful experience with those applications when they were virtualized. They don't run your business, but they're important to your business, which is why there's hundreds of them. They probably have been growing in number over the years, and you want to put them in clouds to obviously consolidate cost. While they're relatively trivial to push to the cloud, one of the things that people forget, of course, is that donkeys, in this case these applications, are very social. And so you've got to provide a lot of connectivity in and between these applications back to the existing infrastructure. And so how the cloud providers do that's really important. The second type of horse is a Shire horse. That is mission critical to your business. That's what gathers in the wheat at the end of the harvest. And that's where all your web applications and your customer-facing things run. You need massive scale out, and you typically have to be able to handle millions of transactions across those systems. The web, the cloud, is very well suited to many of the applications because that's typically how other types of businesses have used cloud to scale and grow at a global level. And then, of course, the third type of horse in this is the racehorse. And racehorses, as we know, have to be fed a very specific diet. They're very sensitive. And those represent things that, in an application sense, are very low latency, very high performance, and absolutely fundamental to you offering the actual service to your customers. One of the things that's really important here as you run the service in your own network versus in the cloud is that you tend to run things in a very deterministic fashion. You know how much latency is in your infrastructure. And one of the things the clouds struggle with is being deterministic for traffic that tend to be non-deterministic, meaning things move around and cost points change. So I want to leave you with the 3 horses. Think about the applications that way. And if you'll excuse my pun now, if you don't think through this properly, then you're going to make an ass of yourself.
Oh, ba-bum. Andrew, thank you very much indeed. Oh, dear me. Oh, well, it's always horses for courses. Thanks, Andrew. Our final expert witness, Francesca, please come to the lectern. Francesca Serravalle, who is the Head of Infrastructure and Energy with Vodafone UK.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really shocked that my co-panelists, they stayed within 3 minutes. People who knows me, I hate scripts, so I don't know how it's going to go. So this debate, cloud and telco partnership has been a loved, hated, and heated discussion in the past 2 years. Even I've been in many panels here. And, we started with the question, which I think we haven't answered yet. Are we foe? Are we friends, right? And we invented the new words. We are frenemy, didn't we, Guy? I think we did that. And then we moved on other words. Co-petition. We can collaborate, but we also compete. And I think for me now, after working with also in collaboration with hyperscaler, I think the collaboration potential is great, and it's great if we acknowledge each other's strengths. Let's agree that the hyperscaler are great for data management capability, helping creating the right data architecture to break silos. They're great in AI platform, helping all the verticals, including telco, to become a data and AI enterprise. They're great with their app modernization platform, helping to move towards a service-oriented architecture, and they're great with new ways of working using agile methodology, CI/CD pipeline, and really enable that failing fast innovation culture. But let's also, I think we all agree and we are in consensus that service providers are the king of intelligent fabric, and it's the fabric that reaches the customer. We are the owner of customer experience through enabling reliability, performance, and security. Mark was saying in the previous discussion, carrier grade it's an important term, especially if we think now that security and connectivity, they go hand to hand. Everything is distributed. The application, the users, connectivity is becoming an enabler of critical, mission critical application. So those skills are really important. If we join both forces, then we can enable innovation and experience to the society, to end users and consumer. If we integrate connectivity with their AI platform, we can enable digital transformation and smart application across vertical and smart city. If we integrate connectivity with the app modernization platform, we can enable a cloud migration journey with a greater probability of success. If we integrate connectivity with with collaboration tool, we can increase performance and productivity. So I think, and if we see more players into the ecosystem, I think that will happen faster and we will innovate faster. And I'm shocked it's zero. But well done.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. Francesca, thank you very much indeed. Round of applause. Oh, time flies when you're having fun. Thank you very much to all of our expert witnesses. Range of views and opinions there. Time now, though, for a great telco debate motion. Graham, do we have a motion for this session?
We have a motion. We have a motion. The motion is, it's not the size of your cloud, but what you do with it that matters. And we flip the Alexa coin. I'm speaking for this motion, and Chris is speaking against. So I shall stand and address the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, if I don't win this, then I shall have to take my own life, and you don't. This is so self-evidently true that I can't believe I'm going to lose. But anyway, let me just. I loved Andrew's little thing about horses. Okay, and I was reflecting in the break about animal names that are used as verbs. Hedgehogging, I've never heard before, and I'm not even sure I know what it is actually. But there's badgering, isn't there? Dogging. No offence to Varley. And now we have a bit of horsing about from Andrew as well. So fantastic. So look, last year, as I remember, I compared the hyperscalers to drug dealers, and since then there have been several attempts on my life. So I won't be doing that again. But I think Andrew made a very good point actually, which is that there are many applications that you can safely, although perhaps sometimes irritatingly, but you can put them in the cloud and they work. And the cloud, the hyperscaler cloud, is absolutely ideal for those donkeys, okay? And certainly for the racehorses, there are many things that you can't yet put in the cloud, unless perhaps you make your own cloud, okay? Where you put infrastructure close to your customers and you can guarantee the latency that you need. And if you do build that, then you can offer that capability to other customers, and particularly industrial customers welcome that kind of low latency communication. So there's the cloud that you can buy, and there's a cloud that you can build. And then in addition to that, we mustn't forget that most telcos are national businesses, hyperscalers are global businesses. And there's a play here, I think, for some kind of national component to cloud, especially where security is involved. So that's different to the AWS and Microsoft and Google offering. And the third thing is that there are many companies in the room today which traditional suppliers of tin, like Nokia and Ericsson, who provide much of their offering now over their own cloud. And many telcos consume those services from the likes of Nokia, Ericsson, Huawei, and so on over clouds that are run by those organizations. So there are many types of clouds. There's your own, there's other people's, there's clouds that are very specialized for telecommunications, and there are more generic clouds. So I think I'm going to win this. You should vote for the motion. Thank you very much.
Well done, Graham. Now, despite what your mother told you, size is important. And I think in many of the discussion, and I love the way that the different topics, the debate overlap, and we gradually, through the day, build towards some sort of hope, not consensus, but at least a change in view of the industry. The reason that size is important in the cloud market is that it is allowing us, it is enabling us to get out, heading out of that trench of disillusionment into which we have entered as an industry. The reason I say that is that we've having to move away from the legacy way we've done things, the traditional way, all the way back to the Aztecs probably, but we're fundamentally changing the way we organize our businesses, we run our infrastructure, the way we allocate workloads. But more importantly, and I'm surprised Graham didn't touch upon this, that the data element, and we've had pockets of data mentioned throughout the different debates, the leveraging the scale of let's say Google Cloud, which has a bit more of an interest in the data side of it, leveraging the scale of Azure in terms of what it's doing with some of the bigger telcos and delivering things, and leveraging the scale of AWS in that applications environment. These are all ways that we will leverage to take the telco into the next phase. So actually, size is extremely important. And it does go back to this comment that I think Mark mentioned in the previous debate, that I would argue that we're not even a regional set of industries. We are even local, even sub-national in many cases, because not every telco delivers things to every part of a country. And we know that telcos are generally retrenched. The other part, which I think is important to keep in mind, the global network environment, which used to be the absolute remit of the telcos, actually, the Googles, Amazons, Alibaba, and all these guys, they have almost bigger networks now than the telcos do. So actually, those hyperscalers, that size, that scale, is extremely important because it is building that fundamental backbone to the way in which services get delivered. So ladies and gentlemen, I think despite Graham's threat of topping himself, which I think is a bit over the top, and I don't have an animal analogy for you, but I do think that the scale, the work that the hyperscalers, the larger hyperscalers can do is absolutely critical to shifting the telecom industry into that next era. So we're not looking back, we're looking forward, but we will leverage those hyperscalers, leverage those cloud players with their different skill sets. Let's be clear. I think cloud does come in many forms, and it always does remind me of that. I think if there are any Freemasons in the room, and obviously I'm not going to ask you to identify yourselves as Freemasons, but any Freemasons, the opening cover of the Freemasons manual book is a picture of God, a white bearded God, looking down at the clouds, and he's moving the clouds around. I think that's what we should think of, that you move the clouds around, you manipulate the clouds to your benefit. Now, I'm not saying we're playing God, I'm just saying that the potential is there, the capacity, the size, the scale is there, that we should be leveraging it, and we should, to go back to the previous debate, we shouldn't fear it. I rest my case.
Ooh, quite a lot to unpack. Right, there you go. That's the final motion of our morning session. But before we vote and to help you decide, we're going to open up the debate to the audience. So I am sure one or two hands will go up now. Yes, result. At the back there. Please, the box is coming to you any second now. Here we go.
Thanks again. It was really interesting to hear about the manifesto and all the principles behind it. One of the things that I didn't hear about was how we also reduce the cost. One of the big barriers to cloud, as I see it for telcos, is that the cost of using the cloud is no cheaper than using their own. So what other barriers do you see, the panel, that stops telcos moving towards the cloud?
Ooh, Good question. Popular question, I think, as well in the audience there. Any thoughts about not only the question about the cost of the cloud, but any other barriers?
Can I just ask for clarification? What do you mean when you say cost of moving to the cloud?
Cost of using infrastructure that sits on the
Hyperscalers or?
Yeah, hyperscalers, yeah.
Okay.
Of course, I mean, there's no real benefit if you don't use hyperscalers.
That's debatable. And I think there's lots of organizations, if I may just comment on that. And I think both Kristian and touched upon it a little bit. What was possible 10 years ago was pretty much a one-way street. You had elasticity, time to market, and scale benefits, which could only be provided by the hyperscalers. The in-house building of on-prem private clouds was a hobby project at best, and it required technical debt, and nobody was sure where this would end up in terms of standards and convergence. Today, that is no longer the case. There are scaled-out deployments happening on-prem, which are actually able to use a hybrid model, where you use the public cloud. Actually, Andrew had a good point. Some of those workhorses or workloads are more amenable to certain types of deployment scenarios where you can use them, for example, for burst capacity to put onto the public cloud. But it'd be pointless from an operational and an economic standpoint to all the time have them run on a public infrastructure, because now the technologies are mature, stable, and proven at industrial scale, where you could build that elasticity, scale benefit with a higher degree of control, data sovereignty, security, etc., in your own premises. And it doesn't have to be your own building. It could be your data center provided down the street. And you can also have a higher degree of predictability about the performance and the outcomes. So I think and it's an unfortunate outcome of what's happened from a marketing standpoint in the last 10 years. I'm sure AWS loves it and the rest of the guys. Cloud gets conflated with just one thing in several conversations, just the public cloud. I think a cloud today, especially in the telco world, is a lot more nuanced than that.
Thanks, Vivek. I'm going to cross to Francesca first.
I think it really depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking the type of partnership model and what capability are we using from the cloud. If we're talking about infrastructure as a services, using their modernization platform, more of a like hosting business model, or if we're using their analytics platform. And if we're using the analytics platform, I agree there is a lot of due diligence to do because there is a lot of OpEx which is related to the cloud services into the analytics platform. On the other hand, if we use a centralized platform where all the markets, I'm talking about, Vodafone markets, can leverage that platform in a centralized way using a one-to-many type of business model, then that OpEx can be shared across the different markets. So it really depends on what capability we're talking about, on the partnership model, on the use case you built on top of the analytics platform, and now you share the cost across the different users.
Thanks, Francesca. I'm not commenting. Kristian, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, no, on that, that's a very good question from the audience, and I think it's obvious that it's not one size fits all, and it's not all in the public cloud, depending on your architecture, and particularly thinking of how you run workloads that are specific for telecom applications. I was involved a couple of years ago on the sides of when there was like an OpEx exercise done on moving, in that case, an OSS, BSS completely onto the public cloud. And it was clear it was not doable from a cost point of view, to your point. So I think there is also a mission for our industry, and I'm thinking particularly from the buyer side, to kind of drive that transformation on the pricing models, because I think right now the assumption is that the same models that are applying for traditional IT applications that are scaling up would be applicable on a telco network environment, and clearly they are not. So our dear hyperscalers also have to change their commercial models if they want to play, and I think there's a role even for the likes of our NGMN friends and others to drive this kind of, as a community of telcos as buyers, as by the way they've done also in the infrastructure buying over the years. So there's no reason it couldn't be transformed and the T's and C's and commercial models would evolve. That's my reflection.
Thanks, Kristian. Anita.
Maybe just to add, because I think the question was also about what other obstacles or challenges we see. I would mention processes and skills again. I mean, processes also need to be changed, of course, entirely, orchestration, and so on and so forth. And this is also, of course, what we work on in alliances and in NGMN specifically, how to enable operators and the entire ecosystem to operate disaggregated networks. And there, I think we all still have really a lot of work in front of us as an entire industry.
Yeah, thanks, Anita. Andrew?
So I want to go back to fundamentals. The point of cloud wasn't just cost savings, or that was one of the elements. It was actually business agility. Business agility was perhaps the most important. So it's a pretty simple thing. If you're going to migrate an application to the cloud, do you get more business agility and or does it cost less? If you can't tick those boxes, then don't move it to the cloud. It's pretty simple. Second point, over time, each of the clouds are going to specialize more in individual directions. We as IBM are specialized a lot on the financial services business. Rakuten, you specialized on telco, you probably argue. And so the cloud operators are fighting against the ability for enterprises and telcos to play arbitrage between the clouds. So they're going to find reasons why their cloud will be specialized for what it is that you need and what you do, so that your horse better runs on their course. Right? So I'm going to stick with that very doggedly to the end.
Stick with that analogy. You know, this is the first debate where I've also heard wheat mentioned in two expert witness statements as well. So that's a first for this year. And before we move on, I'd just like to kindly thank Vivek, because in your first comments there, you nicely summed up this entire event when you said that's debatable. That should be our tagline, I think, going forward. Neil, can we get a microphone to the front left? Thank you.
Sorry, I kind of struggle with this. So I've tried to put certain workloads into the cloud, and what you have to think about, it's not just a business model of the cloud. It's actually, they're spending CapEx and investing. Are they building it, to say that the cloud that can run HR software, which is super important because it's the software that gives us paychecks at the end of the month, is the same thing where I'm running SBC software. I think it's kind of a pipe dream, and I've seen it badly melt down. And then you got to skills. So in this scenario, hey, why isn't this working? And you have to find the 5 guys that really understand how the cloud is built for the hyperscalers. And there's 5 of them and pretty much the 3 big guys. And then you say, oh, well, that'll never work. Well, why are you trying to sell it to me? So, I think, and this is a bit of experimentation. Until you try it, you won't know. And I definitely think you should experiment. But I think this isn't really a choice. It's more of a, well, of course we're going to put some workloads here, we're going to put some workloads there, we're going to put some workloads here. And we'll figure that out over time. I think that's a natural evolution, but I don't think there's a right or a wrong here. I think there's more about what's going to work and what isn't going to work, and that's no different to any other technology decision that we've made. One company I would like to kind of applaud on this is Intel, because they've done a lot of work to upskill telcos and being able to build and create the right infrastructure for the private clouds that they want to operate. One of the biggest challenges is we're buying servers that it's only got 2 PCI lanes. I was like, well, that's never going to work. So there is an aspect of that, but I genuinely feel that the hybrid model is the future. I agree with Andrew's point around certain clouds specifying. I actually think we'll see, smaller organizations being much more focused, perhaps in vehicle type stuff. But I also want to reiterate, there's no cloud that's going to help build fiber to someone's house in Aberdeen. That just isn't going to happen. They're not going to help put antennas on buildings. You might help with some planning tools, but the heavy lift of telcos isn't about that aspect of it. And then my kind of final point is that there's a big debate about the 5G core. Put that in the cloud. I mean, I really think that if we don't find another way of monetizing the network in that space, that's probably the inevitable destination. And then for me, it's like, well, then we are just a utility company. And I don't think that's the outcome that is right, or the outcome that we want to have. So, our topic later on is what more can we build to sell to customers? Because this is irrelevant. Customers don't care. They really don't, other than, can I get my connectivity to the cloud? We've been doing that for years. Beyond that, they don't really care. And that's something we need to reflect on.
Thank you, Neil. Any to comment on Neil's observations?
I mean, I absolutely agree. I think specifically on the point about that the majority of the destination is now hybrid cloud. And then you'd have slight variations on how much is on-prem versus public and what nature of workloads. Different telcos have different architectural approaches to it, but I think that is, and it's a good thing. Why is it a good thing? It's a good thing because you are leveraging the best of what public cloud has been able to evolve and offer as business outcomes, agility, scalability, pay-as-you-go models, etc. But then with the hybrid approach, you also retain, and you should retain, that differentiated control, innovation, etc. In terms of cloud platforms, I think a lot of them, specifically the on-prem ones which are targeted to specific industries, they, I think, have a much more intimate relationship with their end industry or vertical, so telco, healthcare, financial services. And what that does is it allows a higher degree of automation and operational intelligence to be built into that platform, which is meaningful for the telco, which is meaningful for the bank, rather than saying it's meaningful for a generic software engineer. Because these are domain-specific workloads. They mean something to that particular domain and industry. And they don't necessarily carry across to another industry as easily. And I think the big shift that we will hopefully see, which will potentially help with the skill set issue a little bit, is the more automated and more specific some of these platforms get, you can leverage or move your team's brain power away from digital plumbing into actual customer-facing innovation. And I think that is a better use of human capital.
Good points. Good points. Thanks very much, Vivek, for that. Andrew?
Can I add one thing, guys?
Go to Andrew first, and we'll come back to you, Chris. Sure. Andrew?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was going to say, I think you've actually just enabled us to have a topic for next year, which is how many clouds are too many clouds? But it's actually a serious point. I mean, in the financial business, the regulators are saying that you can't just operate your application in one cloud. It has to be in multiple clouds. So imagine the financial services business, which never wanted to be in the cloud in the first place, reluctantly in the cloud, now in multiple clouds. And as soon as you go into multiple clouds, then your connectivity paradigms become really complicated. And what actually takes to run an application and all the data sources it has, which are in all different places, and your cost points, to the point earlier, starts to rise pretty significantly. So it becomes a very interesting challenge as we go into that multi-cloud world.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Chris, do you want to come in?
It just occurs to me in discussing this and thinking about the bigger picture of the way, not just the telecom industry, but all industries that's what we might call the IT side, are evolving. The way in which people are delivering services, whether it's a collaboration service, contact center, all this sort of thing, they're all very much cloud-based, obviously. And the companies behind them are building expertise around delivering it. So they're delivering it as a service, as I think was mentioned in various debates already. So those players are those specialized, let's say, communication service providers for, oh no, that's an old acronym, isn't it? Delivering those services, but it's solving a problem. It's delivering, packaging things up in the way that the businesses and, of course, consumers want to consume it. So I think part of the thinking around the whole cloud topic was, we get hung up on the big cloud providers, and as I argued in the motion discussion, they play a fundamentally important role. But actually, everyone is turning into delivering these things in this way as a service, and the knowledge, the expertise they come in, it starts to package things up, and then we consume them from those packages. So I think there is an important shift in the way everyone delivers their services, and for the age-old issue, it's solving problems. A lot of the cloud that we've talked about so far is solving the problems within the telco, and I do agree the hybrid thing is absolutely right. We're not going to just dump it all outside. So I just think we just need to think a little bit more about, do we think of Apple as a cloud provider? And yet they're leveraging the cloud, delivering so much to us in service spaces. Salesforce, Cisco, all these people are building massive capabilities, which scale, to my side of the argument, by the way, the scale to actually address many important issues for businesses and consumers. So I think the definition of cloud is something that we need to think of along with your many clouds, Andrew, for next year.
Thank you, Chris. Francesca?
Yeah, I just want to add on what Niels was saying, and also my co-panelist. I think a hybrid approach is really the way to go, whether we're talking about data, whether we're talking about application or the AI platform, even if we're trying to create a centralized data hub into the cloud, we're still going through a data ownership exercise where we want to understand clearly the data lineage, who is the business owner, who is the operational owner, who is the owner of this data, and what do we want to do based on the security requirement. Does it stay on-prem or can be centralized? What use case are we going to build on top of the analytics platform? Similar for the application, as we modernize OSS and BSS, we are deploying, the Oracle Cloud infrastructure into our own data centers because we think an on-prem solution makes more sense. Again, the AI platform is fully centralized, but the use case we're building on top, some are centralized, some others, for example, when we try to bundle geospatial analysis and ML capability to try and monetize the network, because the geospatial tools, they have all our inventory of our fiber, we're not going to move everything on a centralized. So I think it really depends on use case and whether we're talking about data application or AI, but it's going to be hybrid, I think, most case.
Great, thanks everybody. Let's look around the room for some more questions. If there's anyone, right at the very back there, I think, I don't think you've asked a question yet. Have you asked a question yet? No, it's right behind you. The box is there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much. I was going to say, I'm going to agree with Chris, although maybe say I think you shot his own fox with that argument. I think we have absolutely slipped into that multi-cloud world already, maybe without even realizing it. So much of our data is already in Office from Microsoft or from Apple or from Salesforce or somewhere else. But when we're talking to customers, it's always these days a hybrid deployment. And very often talking to operators, it's four things when they're looking at where do we put data. It's data sovereignty, it's security, it's latency, and it's cost. And those are the four that drive that conversation. And then it's very often a combination of hyperscalers for some things. It's coming to Andrew's point about the horses for courses. Maybe private cloud for some things, which can be very well delivered as SaaS, vendor-provided solutions. And then still, and I'll say it quietly, on-prem. Some people still do on-prem when it's right. The thoroughbred courses, high performance, super low latency. So absolutely hybrid.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much. I think just observations there. No specific comments to address. So Patrick, in the middle here, can we get the microphone to the middle table? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on the multi-cloud question and in particular the point that Andrew made. If you look at, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the government regulation, cybersecurity regulations relating to telcos, if you from a multi-cloud perspective, one of the things that the various cybersecurity agencies are concerned about is that the number of individuals who have skill sets in both telecom, cloud, and security is quite limited. So when they look at multi-cloud from a supply chain diversity perspective, they go tick box, yep, great. From a cybersecurity perspective, however, they look at that very limited pool of individuals having to train themselves and be savvy across multiple clouds, and that thins out that capability really quite dramatically. So from a pure cybersecurity perspective, there's concentrating those capabilities in a single cloud has a certain advantage to it. So multi-cloud has its risks unless we ratchet up the number of individuals that have telco, cloud, and cybersecurity capabilities in one head.
Yes. Thanks, Patrick. Security aspects of multi-cloud. Andrew.
So it's interesting that it's a very, very good point, well made. And it turns out there's a whole lot of startups and other companies like IBM that are going after the problem statement of how do I normalize the experience between the clouds? How do I provide network connectivity between the clouds? How do I provide AIOps? How do I DevOps that enables me to put a whole tool chain and feed into whatever cloud I like without having to have the required specialized skills into each of those clouds, normalizing that experience. Another way is, as fast as the individual cloud vendors are kind of ramping up the number of specialized tool sets they have, there's a set of startups and other companies that are creating tools that normalize that experience end-to-end. I think that's really fascinating.
Francesca?
Yeah, just on the multi-cloud, I think it's not just a matter of non-functional requirement. It is, but I think it's also a matter of capability and roadmap as well. We have a multi-cloud approach. So for data and analytics, we're working with Google when it comes to helping, innovate faster in 5G through policy and also innovating OSS and BSS stack with Oracle. When it comes to innovate proposition for the enterprise, we're working with AWS for network edge application, and then with the Azure Stack to enable that distributed cloud platform for really low latency application to deliver real-time capability into like smart manufacturing. So it really depends what we're talking about. Or we're also, for example, creating a blueprint on AWS to use it for us to innovate faster and create also cognitive capability across different business functions, like smart energy, managing the budget. There is a lot of data, so helping introducing the AI in those business functions is also what we do, and we try to leverage our own data scientists and blueprinting cloud platform as well. So I think it's a multi-cloud approach based on non-functional requirement, but also capabilities and partnership as well.
Okay, thank you. Kristian.
Yeah, I think the skill topic and the multi-cloud topic, I wanted to reflect on it. I think it was actually up last year in the debate as well. And because now we talk here about big players, we talk about Vodafone and many other large telcos who have the capacity to work with multiple providers. But if you think about the remaining 500 or so operators in the world, most of them won't have the capability and skill set, and they will have to make those decisions. Who do they build their main cloud platform with? Because ultimately the people they have that will be certified and trained will then tend to be able to use those tools better. I think it's very important what you brought up, that there is almost like a horizontal initiative that tries to normalize and remove us from that too high dependency. Otherwise, we will get very siloed going forward. So it's an interesting angle that it's really important you guys and others are working on.
Thanks, Kristian. Should we go for another question, Francis? Catch.
Just like to come back to, I think Andrew made a good point earlier. The horses is a great one, but I think the other important one is the agility thing. I think we've had a lot of historical analogies, so I'll go back to Soviet 5-year plans. A lot of what a telco does today is on a long-term, well planned out things. The network doesn't breathe in, breathe out a lot at the moment. It's well fixed. OSSs and BSSs are used to very well-known loads of capacity from customers, etc. So it's not really that surprising that when we try to put that on, say, on a public cloud, the cost savings may not actually make it out. Much of the benefit of a public cloud is about that agility, that I can be servicing 10 customers now, I could be servicing 5,000 customers in 10 minutes time, and then I can take it back down to 10 customers. Is there a need, in terms of addressing the question, is there a need for us actually to be much clearer about what it is we do today, which is a very semi-static network, and what we need to put in place to enable us to be that much more on-demand, scaling, agile network of the future? Because the only, as I say, I think we end up with this sort of picture of cloud is expensive because it is expensive, given we're solving very, very known problems, actually.
Right. Thank you, Francis. Anyone pick up on Francis' comments? Anyone to pick up?
I'm happy to. I feel like
Andrew.
Cool. So I think it's very interesting. The scale out thing I think is really important. And I'll give you an example. I think for most telcos, you probably have first-hand experience with this. When a new iPhone ships, the retail stores, the web applications, the preparation for that across a telco is incredible. And for vendors that are in that environment, we're on the hook. We've got people ready to make sure everything's going to work as perfect as possible. Dare somebody not be able to buy an iPhone on the day it's launched. So you've got that immense scale out there versus that, to your point, that the breathing is less so of an issue. I think the question really for the agility then becomes, for the new applications that are being written, for what we're doing now with ORAN, for what we're doing now with, for all of the things, RICs and so on, where will they live? And do they need that breathe out, breathe in? And how suited is the cloud? how specialized is the cloud to really go fix those or enable those?
Yeah, just on this point, thank you, Francis and Indra. I think the agility will come as we move from a VNF world to a CNF world, because with a VNF world, even if we deploy an AVI infrastructure, still the way we onboard the VNF, we reserve quite a lot of capacity. We still have a worst case scenario as we did, dimensioning scenarios we did in the legacy world. So I think as we move to CNF, then it's going to have a different story, and we're going to have that agility, that scalability that the hyperscaler have. And I think another challenge that we have to reach that agility is also that this legacy to cloudified world, it doesn't happen like in 1 year. It's a multi-year program where we will have both worlds, two IT stack, two technology stack, and that I think slow down a little bit also the agility and the flexibility we're looking at.
Thanks very much, Francesca. Any more comments? Otherwise, we'll go to the floor. Let's go to the floor. We've probably got time for one more question. If there was a question, hand up now. Otherwise, I'm going to ask a question. And, you won't want that to happen, will you? Ray, have you got an online question?
Yeah, we've got a couple of comments here coming in from online. One is a comment, one is a question. The comment is more about whether telcos are still too generally untrusting of the global cloud partners, and this has led to them missing out on potential revenue growth. This is seen as still a problem by the person who sent in here. And the other question is about whether there are enough and the right clouds already for AI workloads, or will new cloud providers be needed for that, particularly at the edge?
Okay. Thanks to our online audience for those. Any comments in any order? We've already...
I can take a stab at the AI bit. I think all the 3 or 4 big hyperscalers already have quite an extreme focus on providing a set of dedicated capabilities on AI workloads, let alone their own models, etc. But just generally in terms of being able to compute and inference and do stuff. But there are also specialized cloud providers emerging all across the world who are dedicatedly now offering pay-as-you-go, on-demand, self-serve capability for you to be able to do AI stuff and only AI stuff, which means you would never use, Neil used the example of being able to use HR software. You would not go to this AI cloud provider to host your HR software because it would be cost prohibitive, very GPU heavy, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no, at least in my opinion, for the next several years, there's no single consolidated segment of the cloud market which will reign supreme. There are benefits of scale from a cost economics point of view, although I think the motion's going to be shut down. But I think it's going to be a mix between some of the biggest hyperscalers who have their own investments in how they want to see the AI movement go forward, but also some generic AI capabilities for others who want to play there in sandbox, as well as specialized AI providers.
So certainly in the field of AI is a case for selecting the right cloud for the right job in that particular instance.
But don't discount on-prem. So you've got vast amounts of data that AI is needing to process. Are you going to push all of that to the cloud? There are absolutely going to be use cases where you need to bring AI to the data and not the other way around. And so don't discount the on-prem as being important in the mix of this.
As long as you can get the GPUs.
Well, if you can get GPUs. Supply chain issues still, 2023.
If you can get the GPUs.
Even on device, not just on.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's true. So I mean, there's a lot of industrial uses of AI, which I think kind of intuitively you would think that they would be quite easy and they would be quite light in terms of their data processing, but actually they're really intensive, and you simply cannot push that data out from a factory or an airport or whatever across a public network. You have to keep it there. So I completely agree with that. Yeah.
And customer data, you can't go pushing customer data. You're breaching all sorts of GDPR.
Yeah. the sovereignty in Europe.
Kristian.
Yeah, no, I think the AI question is actually the real opportunity, in my opinion. We talked about identity and other potential drivers for revenues on the telco side. I do think that actually resides that opportunity in the AI applications.
Kristian.
Because they do need to be down there at where the users and the data are. And I think that's completely unexplored yet.
Yes. Yeah, well, as I've just heard in my right ear, we have a session on AI coming up, so stick around for that session. Any more comments?
Not on the AI part, but on the trust part. So I think trust needs to be earned, like in human relationships. And we see a lot of initiatives already, operators moving to cloud environments. And I believe that it's even more important to have this assurance of multi-cloud environments and interoperability to not end up in a vendor lock-in situation again. And that's what we want to achieve. Yeah.
Thanks, Anita. Any more comments? If not more comments, then we shall wrap up the Q&A stage. Right. Fantastic. Thank you very much for all those questions. And obviously to our expert witnesses for their comments. Right, we are going to move on to the voting stage. So as a reminder of our motion, the motion is, it's not the size of your cloud, but what you do with it that matters. Graham was arguing for and Chris was arguing against. It's time now to pick up your Paddle Pro, switch it on, activate it, and point the appropriate side towards the stage. So if you are with Graham, point the green side towards the stage. If you are with Chris and against the motion, point the red side towards the stage. I guess my vote doesn't count. I'll put that down. Here we go. And vote now. Well, it's a close one, but I think the fours have just about got it. It's a 4. Wow, that was quite comprehensive, wasn't it? And we spent ages trying to make sure these motions are going to be evenly balanced, but poof, what do we know?
That's the problem with using Alexa to toss your coin.
Yeah, there you go. No Alexis next year, Perplexity or something. Thanks, everyone. That's lunchtime. We have an hour for lunch. Lunch, I believe, is next door, buffet lunch next door. We recommence at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. sharp. See you then. Round of applause for all our guests. Thank you very much.